Hey everybody, it's Jay. Welcome to the channel. Today I am doing photo critiques. I asked my viewers to send in images, one or two shots, and I would critique them. I've actually served as a judge for photo competitions for mostly camera clubs across the country. So I thought it would make a pretty interesting video where I would critique people's shots. Remember, this is very subjective, right? So this is just my opinion. You looking at this video might have a very different opinion, and that's perfectly fine. And if I'm critiquing your image, don't take anything personally. I'm just again expressing my opinion. But hopefully, as you listen to my comments and look at the shots, you'll take something away and maybe look at your own images more critically. I know it happens to me when I kind of go through this process. If you're interested in having one of your shots critiqued, just send one in. The email to use is jcphotocritique@gmail.com. I'll put it in the information down below. But I'll be doing more of these videos, and so hopefully I'll get more in, and I can make this maybe a monthly or certainly a regular video. It adds nice content to my channel. So with that, let's jump on my computer and we'll start getting through some images. Okay, I think I'm gonna get started here. I think what I'm probably gonna do is do this in two parts. I've got a lot of images to get through. So I'll get through maybe 20 or so the first time. I'll do a separate video with another 20 so I can spend a little bit more time on each shot. Let me get started. Okay, well I'm on my computer now. I'm in Lightroom and I've got a bunch of images to get through. They are in no particular order. This is the first one and I really like this shot. It's a very interesting setting. The lighting on the girl, who's beautiful by the way, is super nice. I love her pose, very relaxed. Love the foot up on the tree trunk. For me, generally I don't love distracting elements in the foreground. I think it kind of works here, some of these flowers or dead flowers or weeds in front, because it does give you a sense of place. And it's just kind of gnarly compared to what is a very soft, beautiful image of a girl. The only thing I would do probably, since the eye is drawn to brighter parts of the image, some of the sky poking through on the upper left, I would probably clone that out. I mean, I'm in Lightroom now, but even if I just took a brush and darkened them a little bit, brought down the highlights, and went in here and did this over here as well, maybe even up here, here's the before, here's the after. Just getting rid of those bright spots draws my eye even more towards the girl, which is obviously the main subject, and she is just fantastic. Super nice image. Love the texture as well on those tree trunks. Let's go to the next one. So here's a portrait. Supermodel again. I mean, what a great looking guy. I don't know if this is a self-portrait or not. I hope it is, because I just gave someone a nice compliment. A couple things I don't love about this shot. I think you've lost some of the detail in the skin on the wrist and on his cheek. If you kind of go in, it's just, I'm going to move up a little bit, but right in here, you lost some detail. On the cheek, you lost some detail. It's just a little bit too bright for me. In addition, the pose I feel is a little awkward. His shoulder and arm, because they're closer to the camera, look really big compared to his face. I guess I would love to see a little light in the other eye as well, but love the hat. He's got a great look. And I love the drama of this too. And the processing I find to be pretty good, except for, again, you got some highlights there that I would probably pull back. I mean, I'm playing around. Even if you just bring down highlights a little bit, get some detail. This is a JPEG, so if I had the raw image, you could do more with it. But, it just might help a little bit just to pull back some of those highlights. But overall, good image. Here's the next one. So this is taken in Brooklyn. This is Brooklyn Bridge Park. What I like about this image, the photographer really nailed the lighting, right? You've got the light hitting the buildings, the ambient light from the sky, and the light from the buildings themselves, nicely matching the light from the sky. It's a great location. If you're ever in Brooklyn, you got to go to this spot. For me to improve it, I would have used a much longer exposure. This is a 10-second exposure. if you went out a minute, that water, which looks a little muddled, you could make it smooth as glass. And I think it would help the image even more. The only other thing I would do is on the far right, there's a lot of those trees, and you really can't avoid those trees, but maybe I would have shifted my body to the left a little bit. But overall, great time of day to shoot, great spot to shoot. Go for those long exposures though. When you have a super long exposure, 60 seconds, even 2 minutes, it really does add to sort of the ethereal feeling. The rocks in the foreground, I think you could have a debate about that. I kind of like them. It gives you a sense of place. So for me, I like the fact that the photographer left them in there. Here's the next one. Looks somewhere tropical. I don't know this lighthouse, but it's pretty awesome. The colors are great. The lighting on the lighthouse is good. And I like what the photographer was trying to do, framing the shot with these kind of decaying columns on either side. Because they're so decaying to me, I find them a little distracting. In the foreground with this grass down here and this piece of cement, that I find distracting as well. It's there, not much you can do about it. If you want to, you can probably crop it out. So I would try to clean this up a little bit. It's a nice image. Maybe this shot at sunset, depending on where the sun was setting, might be interesting. This is clearly sort of middle of the day, which never gives you the best light. But again, because the sun must be behind a cloud now, it's pretty soft. And the processing here is good too. It's very natural. They pulled up the yellows a little bit, which highlights the yellow on the lighthouse. So pretty cool image. Probably would have liked it a little cleaner. So here's a long exposure. This one is nice and long. This is 60 seconds, so that water definitely gets smoothed out even more. This is a nice minimalist shot. You have muted colors. I'm glad the photographer didn't go crazy with the saturation slider, because sometimes people do that. You could think about those sticks on the pear. Do they need to be there? I don't mind that they're there. They don't really detract too much from me from the image. Overall, I like this image. It's probably a shot I would have taken like this. It may not make my portfolio, but it's a good, solid shot in my view. God, I wish I knew where this was. I'm sure most of you watching this could pinpoint exactly where this is. This is an interesting shot. Obviously a nice cityscape. It looks to me like the smoothness of the water and the cloud movement may have been done in post. It's hard to tell because it does say that the shutter speed is 1/200th of a second. So obviously you wouldn't get that kind of effect with that faster shutter speed. For me, when I'm doing architecture, I do like to darken the sky. This seems a little too dark, looks almost a little too fake to me. You lost some of the highlights in the tall building on the top as well, but overall pretty good. The only other thing is it looks like, I don't know if it was done in post, but if you look, let me just move this over to the side here. On the far right, there's some strange stuff going on in the sky. I'm not sure how that happens, but I think probably there was something there the photographer got rid of. It looks like this tree may have climbed up into that part of the image, but overall nice, clean it up a little bit, and not that dark a sky. Oh, let me make this bigger. So this is the Louvre in Paris, which has been photographed a gazillion times. I like this take on it though. I think this is really cool. I like the way the photographer left the stairs in the foreground. It gives you a real sense of place. The framing with those nice, neat columns in this case is good. And the long exposure. This is a 20-second exposure. And so you get that little bit of cloud movement in the sky. The fountains, which are relatively small in this image, become a little bit smoother. I love the fact that there's not many people in this shot. I mean, I don't know how hard it is to find a shot of the Louvre where there's not many people. I probably would have cloned out some of the people. Like if I zoom in here, there's someone just beyond this, the pyramid here. I probably would have cloned that person out because it just, to me, looks distracting. The person over on this side, though, right over here, that's cool. He's got a nice little pose. Overall, I really like this image. Again, probably wouldn't have made the sky totally black, but overall, a really good image. So I'm a big waterfall fan. I shoot waterfalls mostly in the fall, but what I like about this is the framing. This tree on the right and the roots below, I think add a lot to the image. The only thing I would change here, I would not have gone out 15 seconds on the exposure. You don't need to go out that far or that long to get smooth water. When you go out too long, what happens is that the water becomes kind of mushy. You can see down here, it's just kind of a white blob. If this had been a 5-second exposure, you probably would have seen some detail in that water. It looks slightly overprocessed, not too crazy, but someone took the clarity slider maybe a little bit to the right. But overall, the composition is really cool. It's a beautiful waterfall. And there's not many distractions. I mean, when you're photographing outside, often there's logs, branches. You know, I probably would have cloned out in the lower right. There's a little branch I would have cloned out, maybe this branch here. But in general, a clean shot, well framed, well constructed. So this, Niagara Falls. It says it up on the left. I have not shot this scene before. I've seen other people shoot it. I really like the long exposure, the smooth water. It's an interesting contrast between the very smooth water on the left, almost ethereal, and the very rough, jagged landscape on the right. For me, it's a little dark on the right, and honestly, I think the water's more interesting. Like I probably would have had 2/3 water, 1/3, cliff and small structure underneath. But boy, what a shot with those icicles coming down. I mean, it's so dramatic. So the drama's nice. I would have changed the balance a little bit and maybe pulled up the shadows a little bit. You're losing a lot of detail on the far right. It's totally black. I would have liked to have seen a little bit of detail there, but overall, really cool shot. Got a bunch of architectural shots. Here's one. I like what they were going for. You got that drama in the sky, cloud movement, which again, based on the shutter speed, 250th of a second, looks like it may have been achieved in post, which is okay. I mean, I do that sometimes. We all would rather have real clouds, but sometimes you can't always get it. For me, the only negative here is the building itself is not such an interesting building. I have the fortune of living around New York City, and so there's a lot of cool architecture that I get to photograph. There's some cities where the architecture is a little bit more pedestrian. So the building itself doesn't do much for me. I do like the reflections, though, of other buildings in the truest building. So that's kind of cool. Overall, I like what they were going for. Listen, you shoot what you can find, right? This person was in this city. They saw this scene. They kept things pretty vertical, which is nice. That's not always easy to do. So overall, pretty good. I'd love to see a more interesting architecture, honestly. So interesting architecture, here we go, right? This is the Sydney Opera House, I'm assuming. It's a pano, and it's really cool. I mean, talk about highlighting the features of this architecture. You really do get a sense of that. Like, it's known for the roof, right? And so you're really highlighting that by keeping that brighter. Again, I tend not to have fully black skies, and so I would have kept maybe a little bit of lightness, like a deep gray maybe for the sky. But what you're doing here is you're allowing the viewer to focus on the architecture. And the stairs, the texture of the stairs are really cool. And this is actually not a perspective that you typically see for the Sydney Opera House. So it's a nice clean shot. I really do like this quite a bit. This is what happens when you use a really long exposure. Right? This is over 2 minutes, and that water becomes silky smooth. It's almost like milk or glass. And I really like that. And this is a super interesting pier. I mean, just the detail in the pier. The photographer did a great job of getting everything in focus. So kind of the nearest piece of the pier and the tip of the pier generally, in focus. Maybe they focus stacked, I'm not sure. So I really like this. For me, the blue in the upper right's a little bit too saturated. Probably would have pulled that back a little bit. I don't know if I can do it here. Let me see if I take saturation back a little bit. I find that to be a little bit more interesting. Almost you want to go into the color grading or the color mixer and play around with it. But overall good. There's a couple of sensor spots you could have deleted, but overall really cool image. Another architectural shot. I really like the minimalism here. If you know this building, and I don't, it's all you need to see is just kind of the highlighted features of this building. But I like the fact that they kept the side lit as well, a little bit dimmer. The processing is pretty cool. Again, for me personally, I don't love totally black skies, but it does work here. The building really pops. It's really minimalist. And it's great contrast in the building itself. So well done. Don't know where this one is, but you're reflecting a sunrise. You do have a very interesting sky, which is kind of cool. For me, it's a little confusing, right? You have a very interesting building on the far left with some curve in it. You've got this dramatic dark building, on the upper part of it, and then this other piece of the building, which is not particularly interesting to me. So I'm not sure I love the composition here. I think it could have been better thought out, maybe seeing more of the building. This is 24 millimeters. This was as wide as they could go. Maybe you couldn't move back at all, but I kind of want to see the top of that building to some extent. Like the black and white processing. Again, you have a sky that's not too dark, but darkened a little bit that allows the eye to focus on the building. I just find it a little confusing from a compositional standpoint. This is more interesting to me. This is a pretty interesting building. We know what the subject is. I love the curved roof on the left. I don't know if it's part of the same building or not. A couple things I would have done. In the lower part of the frame, you see kind of the brightness coming through from the building behind it. And I find that a little distracting. I almost would have, if I just, crop, I'm going to just crop that out, hit enter. That I find less distracting. The other thing I would have done in post is the top of that curve, I would have brightened that up and made that really pop because it's a very interesting feature of the architecture. But overall, nice subject, nice angle, and I like the combination of the curved facade of that roof and the really cool building, which has its own curves in the back and the reflective nature of that building as well. This I really like. Again, long exposure, 88 seconds. And you smooth out that water. I love it on a foggy day, right? It really minimalizes everything. And it's such an interesting pier, or there's a thing, light boat on the left side, whatever structure that is. This, I think, is a really awesome image. Nothing I would do to this to make it better. I think it's really super. This one I like a lot. South of the border, Burrito Loco, that palm tree, the composition, the processing, the colors, not overly saturated, obviously warmed up a bit, but I kind of like that. The only thing I would do is on the lower left, you've got this half of a sign that is super distracting to me. I don't think I can do this in Lightroom. This is more of a Photoshop thing, but the remove tool in Photoshop would allow you to get rid of that really easily. This is not going to do such a good job, but I mean, just to give you a sense, that's probably as good as it would get. So if I do before with it, after, one less distraction, that just doesn't add to the image at all, but really a nice shot. So I don't do a lot of birds. I can appreciate good bird shots. This is definitely one of them. You get some really cool action with the fish. pin sharp focus on the eye of the bird. That is not easy to do. This is about 100 millimeters roughly, so they were reasonably far away. You can't pick your own light, right? And so you've got light that's really coming from the far left. Ideally, you would have more light on the bird, but because the bird is in shadow, it became a little bit blue. So what I might do in post is just brighten up the feathers of the bird, take out some of that blue. But overall, love this snap. This is a good one with the fish there, with the leg raised, the texture of the feathers. I think the cropping is good, gives enough room around the bird. Overall, a really cool bird image. I see a lot of bad bird images. This is definitely one of the good ones. I do some street photography. I'm not that good at it. This, I think, is a really cool image. There is a story here. The poster is fantastic. The colors are great. The alignment of the chairs. We have an interesting subject sitting in the chair. I like the fan too. I mean, my instinct initially was, should we get rid of the fan? No, it really tells you more about the place. It adds to the story. It feels like Florida to me. Maybe it's the colors. They're Miami Dolphin colors. But overall, I like this. Ideally, I would see a little bit of the guy's face, but you know what? Forget that. It's really a great shot. I like this a lot. Here's another one. This is a subway station in New York City. It looks like the 72nd Street subway station, which I used to commute out of many, many years ago. This is a really cool shot. You don't need a very long exposure. This is 1.3 seconds. You're capturing the movement of the trains, and both trains seem to be moving, which is not easy to do. You've got the subject staying fairly still. He's reading something, so it makes sense. So you get this nice contrast between the still subject, the moving trains. I love the low position. Really good shot. I wish I had taken this. How's that? So this is a nice one. Well, that wraps up part one. Hope you got something out of it. If you did, just give me a like, a thumbs up. It helps the channel. If you want your images critiqued, just send 1 or 2 images to me at jcphotocritique@gmail.com. It's in the comments down below. And I'll be doing more of these. So I would love to take a look at your work and kind of give you some feedback. Also, make sure you watch out for the next week or two, part 2 of this video. And until next time.